I spent 12 years building software that grew our family business from $1 to $110 million. Then, at my father's birthday dinner, my mom announced they were replacing me with my sister. We don't need unsuccessful people. From today, lovely daughter takes over. I walked away without a word. Next day, when they arrived at the office, all shocked. I'm Patricia Baker, and this is the story of how I discovered that sometimes the people closest to you, your own family, can turn out to be your biggest challenge, especially when it comes to business. For over a decade, I gave everything I had, my time, my energy, my ideas, to our small family-owned tech company. What started as a tiny computer repair shop in a quiet strip mall eventually became a thriving $110 million software enterprise. I was proud. I believed we had all succeeded together. But what I didn't see coming was how success could stir up envy, even within your own home. Let me take you back to the beginning. My dad started the computer repair shop around 30 years ago. It was his passion project. Even though it didn't bring in much money, it meant the world to him. He ran it with pride, often working long hours just to keep the lights on. Back then, it barely paid the bills, but to him, it was a legacy. I was the quiet one in the family, the one who stayed behind to help Dad while also working toward a degree in computer science at our local college. My sister, Kelly, on the other hand, was the golden child. Straight, top of her class, and later, a student at one of the most prestigious business schools in the country. Everyone always expected big things from her. "Patricia, you're wasting your potential here," Kelly used to say when she visited during college breaks. "You should be doing more, aiming higher." But I saw something she didn't. I saw the opportunity in our small shop. While Kelly was studying business theory, I was gaining hands-on experience in programming and learning about the real-world challenges that small businesses faced. I wasn't just dreaming, I was building. During my final year in college, I created our first piece of original software, a simple but efficient inventory management tool for small businesses. It wasn't flashy, but it worked well, and it was affordable. At first, Dad was unsure. He didn't think people would buy it, but when the first few local businesses started purchasing licenses and spreading the word, he changed his mind. "Maybe you're onto something here, kiddo," he said with a rare smile. For a moment, I felt truly seen. That one sentence fueled me for years. After I graduated, I dove in head first. I worked 15-hour days, 6 days a week. I handled everything: development, customer support, marketing. Slowly but surely, the shop evolved into a software company. We expanded our services and gained more clients, going from our local community to national partnerships. Through it all, my mom would check in on me, gently concerned. "Don't work yourself too hard, Patricia," she'd say as she brought me dinner at the office. "You need a life outside of this." But I was driven, not just by ambition, but by a need to prove myself, to show my family that I was more than the quiet girl in the background. After 5 intense years, our business finally reached a major milestone: $3 million in annual revenue. It was a huge deal. That's when things started to change. Out of nowhere, Kelly announced she was moving back home. She had quit her high-powered job at a top consulting firm in Florida and was ready, she said, to take her rightful place in the company. We were at the dinner table when she said it so casually, as if it were always meant to happen. "With my business expertise," she said confidently, "we could take things to the next level." Dad looked at her with pride in his eyes. "That's wonderful, Princess," he said. "We could use your professional touch around here." And just like that, I felt everything stop. My fork hung mid-air, and my thoughts raced. The company I had built with sleepless nights and relentless effort was now being offered to Kelly just because she had a fancy degree and the right words. No mention of the years I put in. No recognition of how we even got to this point. I realized then that success doesn't always protect you. It can sometimes put a target on your back, even from the people you love most. But I kept my thoughts to myself and decided to play along, hoping things might work out. I didn't want to create tension in front of my family or our employees, so I smiled, nodded, and tried to be a team player. That's how Kelly became co-CEO despite having zero experience in our industry. Dad thought it would look good for the company to have someone with her background and fancy degree up front. He said it would impress investors and help our image. I didn't agree, but I accepted it. From then on, I focused on what I did best: building products, managing operations, and working closely with our clients. Kelly, on the other hand, became the face of the company. She handled marketing, public appearances, and investor relations. The next 7 years felt like a strange split. While I was buried in code and team meetings, making sure our software stayed innovative and useful, Kelly was attending tech conferences, accepting awards, and giving interviews about being a successful woman in tech. She told stories that made it sound like she had created the very tools I spent sleepless nights building. Despite the imbalance, the company continued to grow. We reached $110 million in annual revenue. But the more we succeeded, the more strained our relationship became. Kelly began leaving me out of important meetings. She made big decisions without telling me. And slowly, she started pushing me to the background, treating me like an employee in a company I had built with my bare hands. Then came Dad's 60th birthday. Kelly, of course, took charge of the party. She rented out the grand ballroom at the most luxurious hotel in the city. It wasn't so much a birthday celebration as it was a business event, full of investors, clients, and high-profile guests. That was always Kelly's way. Every move had to serve a purpose. I showed up early to help set up. I wore a simple black dress, nothing flashy, but elegant enough. The moment Kelly saw me, she frowned. "Couldn't you have tried a little harder?" She whispered sharply. "These are important people, Patricia." I bit my tongue. I didn't want to argue. I just focused on greeting guests as they arrived, making sure everything ran smoothly. The room filled fast. Everyone was chatting, drinking, and networking. Kelly floated from group to group, smiling like a politician. I stayed in the background, making sure everything was perfect. Then dinner was served, and Kelly stood to give a speech. I assumed she'd say something heartfelt, share memories about Dad or thank the team. But instead, she dropped a bomb. "As we celebrate our father's 60th birthday tonight," she began, her voice loud and clear, "it's time to share some exciting news about the future of Greenchin Technologies." I blinked. News? What news? "The board has decided that to move forward, the company needs strong, unified leadership," she continued. "For too long, we've been held back by outdated methods and a reluctance to change." I felt the blood drain from my face. What board meetings? I had never been invited to any. "That's why, effective immediately, I will be taking over as the sole CEO." The room went completely silent. I could hear forks clink against plates as people turned to look at me. Kelly kept going, cool and confident. "Some people are better suited to technical roles than leadership. My sister Patricia has done an okay job maintaining our systems, but we need vision. We need forward-thinking leadership. And frankly, Patricia, you're just not cut out for this level of business." I sat frozen in my chair. I turned to Dad, waiting for him to say something to defend me, but he didn't. He was nodding along, smiling like this was exactly what he wanted. My mom looked down at her plate, silent and pale, her hands trembling. Kelly wasn't finished. "The truth is," she said, raising her glass, "Patricia's old-fashioned ideas and lack of proper business training have become a burden. It's time for her to step aside gracefully." The silence in the room was heavier than I'd ever felt. I could feel the judgment, the pity. People whispered, and some avoided my eyes. Everything I had worked for, every sacrifice, every night I stayed up late coding, every client I convinced to believe in us was all being ripped away in front of hundreds of people. And the worst part, it was my own family doing it. Everything I had built, everything I had worked so hard for was being taken from me, right in front of all the people I had known for years. I stood up slowly. The sound of my chair dragging against the polished ballroom floor echoed like a thunderclap, turning heads. Everyone expected drama. Maybe I'd cry, maybe I'd yell, but I didn't give them that satisfaction. Instead, I picked up my purse, walked calmly over to my father's table, and placed a small gift-wrapped box in front of him. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said in a soft, steady voice. Then I turned around, head held high, and walked out of that room full of whispers, stares, and smug smiles. I didn't look back. Later that night, as I sat in my home office surrounded by the awards, patents, and certificates that carried my name, I made a decision. Let them celebrate tonight, I thought. Let them believe they've won. Kelly might have thought she outsmarted me, but she had forgotten one very important thing, something that would soon turn her so-called victory into the worst mistake of her life. I opened my laptop and started typing, a quiet smile forming on my lips. Tomorrow was going to be very, very interesting, because there's more than one way to run a successful company. And while Kelly had been busy posing for magazine covers and giving interviews, I'd spent 12 years learning the real business from the ground up. The next morning dawned clear and bright. I got to the office early, before anyone else, and waited. At exactly 9 a.m., Kelly walked in like she owned the place. Dad, right beside her, both of them beaming like they'd just won the lottery. Their faces were full of pride and satisfaction, faces I couldn't wait to watch crumble. "Patricia?" Kelly said, her voice laced with surprise and a hint of annoyance. "What are you doing here? I thought after last night, you'd at least have the grace to stay home." I smiled, thinking about the email I had sent at 4 a.m. to every major client, partner, and senior staff member at Greenchin Technologies. "Just finishing up a few things, dear sister," I replied calmly. "Since you're here, we might as well talk about the company's future." "There's nothing to discuss," Dad said firmly. Kelly is in charge now. The board already approved it. The board, I said, pulling out my tablet. Let's talk about that, shall we? I connected my tablet to the conference room's big screen. While Kelly was busy throwing parties and giving interviews, I was the one actually building this company. And there are a few key things you've both forgotten. I tapped on the screen and pulled up a document. First off, let me remind you, I own 55% of Greenshine Technologies. When the company was incorporated 13 years ago, Dad gave both Kelly and me 27% shares and kept 46% for himself. But remember 5 years ago when we needed extra funding to expand? Dad, you sold me 12% of your shares that day because you were too busy attending Kelly's award ceremony to look through the paperwork. Their faces began to pale. Kelly gripped the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. That's not possible, she whispered. Dad would never. He did. I cut in, bringing up more documents. And that's not all. Is the software responsible for 90% of our company's revenue? It isn't owned by Greenshine Technologies. It's owned by my private company, Innovate Solutions LLC. Greenshine Technologies only has a license to use it. I glanced at my watch, or rather had a license. That agreement expired about 15 minutes ago. Dad slowly sank into a chair, his face full of shock and dawning realization. The renewal documents, he mumbled. The ones you asked me to sign last week. I didn't read them. I was helping Kelly plan the party. Exactly, I said, and I decided not to submit them. Kelly's face twisted in anger. You manipulative little. Careful, sister, I warned, holding up a hand. You might want to hear the rest before you finish that sentence. While you were busy celebrating my so-called graceful exit last night, I was doing something else, something far more important. I was sending emails. You see, most of our major clients didn't just sign with Greenshine Technologies because of the company's name. They signed because of me, my experience, my leadership, and my results. Many of them have personal loyalty clauses written into their contracts, clauses that allow them to walk away if I ever leave the company. And last night, I told them I was leaving. I tapped on my tablet and brought up my email inbox. Dozens of replies had already come in. Short, sharp, and to the point. I looked straight at Kelly and Dad, my voice calm but firm. Would you like to know how many clients have already activated their termination clauses? I asked. Or how many of our best developers, who, by the way, don't work for Greenshine Technologies but for my separate company Innovate Solutions, have accepted offers to join my new venture? The room went quiet. Through the glass walls of the conference room, we could see people starting to gather. Employees were checking their phones and reading the company-wide messages and updates. The whispers spread fast, like wildfire. Kelly's carefully practiced smile slipped as she unlocked her phone, fingers shaking. Her perfect world was crumbling around her, and she was realizing just how little control she really had. You can't do this, she stammered. The company you tried to steal from me? I interrupted. The one you thought you could just take over because you have a shiny MBA and Dad's approval? That company stopped existing the moment you humiliated me in front of our family and friends. I stood up slowly and smoothed my dress, letting the silence stretch. Then I laid out their options. So here's what happens next, I said clearly, my eyes locking onto both of them. Option 1. I walk away. I take my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Greenshine Technologies becomes an empty shell, just a name on a building. And you can explain to all those investors and partners why the company lost its value overnight. Dad's face looked 12 years older than it had when he walked in. His shoulders slumped as the weight of reality set in. And option 2, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Option 2, I said, is that you both resign, right here, right now. I take full control of Greenshine Technologies. You keep your shares as silent partners. You'll still get your dividends, but you'll have no say in how the company is run. Kelly gets a nice severance package and glowing references to help her find a job somewhere far away from here. Kelly's face turned red with anger. You planned this, she hissed. You've been waiting to stab us in the back. I laughed, but there was no joy in it. No, Kelly, I spent 12 years trying to be a good daughter and a supportive sister. While you took credit for my work, I stayed silent. While you smiled for the cameras, I kept this company alive. I didn't plan this until 12 hours ago, right after you stood on that stage and called me worthless in front of everyone we know. My phone buzzed. Another client had terminated their contract. Time's running out, I said quietly. What's it going to be? The next hour passed in a blur. Lawyers coming in, documents being signed, final decisions made. By noon, I sat alone in what was now officially my office, looking out across the city. The company I had built from nothing was finally mine. I should have felt victorious, but instead, all I felt was empty. The damage had been done. The company survived, but my family didn't. The trust had shattered as fine crystal dropped on a tile floor. The silence in the room felt heavier than any celebration could have lifted. That evening, my mother came to visit. Her eyes were red and tired, as though she'd been crying all day. "Did it really have to end this way?" she asked softly, standing in the doorway. I looked at her for a long moment before replying. "They left me no choice," I said gently. "They would have taken everything I built. They would have erased me from my own story and never looked back." She nodded slowly, sadly. She understood even if it broke her heart. "And what happens now?" she whispered. I looked out the window at the skyline lit up by the setting sun. "Now," I said, "now I rebuild on my terms." I laid the blueprints on the table, the ones I had been quietly working on for months. They showed the future I was planning. New products, cutting-edge innovations, and bold expansions into markets we hadn't even touched yet. Ideas I had held back, waiting for the right moment. And now, that moment had arrived. This time, I would build something even greater. But I'd do it without the weight of people who once looked me in the eye and saw someone they thought was easy to dismiss, someone they thought was worthless. Over the next year, Green Chin Technologies flourished under my full control. We didn't just survive. We tripled in value. Clients returned, new partnerships were formed, and the company finally stepped into the spotlight for all the right reasons. Kelly, humbled by the consequences of her actions, moved to Manhattan. She found a position at a small startup, far from the empire she once believed she could control. I hoped she'd grown. I hoped she learned. Dad quietly stepped away from the business. Retirement suited him. He finally saw what he'd been blind to for so long, that his favorite child had nearly ruined everything he spent a lifetime building. We see each other during the holidays now. We smile politely, ask about each other's health, and pass the mashed potatoes like strangers pretending to be close. There's a distance between us that never quite closes. Some wounds just don't heal all the way. Sometimes, late at night, I flip through old photo albums, ones where we're all smiling, frozen, and happier moments. I feel a pinch of sadness for the family we used to be, for the closeness we lost. But then I remember that birthday night. I remember Kelly's cold, satisfied smile. I remember Dad's nod of agreement as she tore into me with words sharp enough to cut. Respect in business and family is something you earn, not something you inherit, not something you demand. They both learned that lesson, but it came far too late. As for me, I learned something too. I learned that the quiet ones, the underestimated ones, the ones everyone ignores, they're the ones you should be watching. We know how to build from scratch, and more importantly, we know how to take it all back when someone tries to steal what's ours. My story spread. It became a sort of whispered tale in the business world, a reminder to never underestimate the wrong person. These days, when I attend conferences or speak at events, I often hear the murmurs. "That's Patricia Greenchin, the one who..." They never finish the sentence. They don't need to. My success finishes it for them. Just last week, an invitation arrived. Kelly's old business school wanted me to speak at their graduation ceremony. The topic? Hidden strengths. The power of underestimated leaders. I said yes. With a small smile, I began planning my speech, because now I have something to say, and people are finally ready to listen. Under my leadership, the company continues to thrive, not just in profits, but in purpose. But more than the success, I found something else. Peace. Peace in knowing I stayed true to myself. Peace in the choices I made, even the hard ones. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is prove people wrong without saying a word. And sometimes, the best kind of revenge isn't revenge at all. It's rising so high that even the ones who doubted you can't look away. As I sit here in my office, the city skyline stretching far beyond my window, I think of something my mother once told me. Success is the best revenge. But wisdom is knowing when to stop chasing revenge and start chasing growth. She was right. I've let go of the anger. The pain doesn't feel me anymore. I'm building something now that matters. Something lasting. Something real. I still have that small gift-wrapped box, the one I never gave Dad. Inside is a photo album I made for his birthday that year. It tells the story of our company, from that tiny, dusty repair shop to the empire it became. I haven't given it to him yet. Maybe someday, I will when we've healed enough, when the silence between us feels a little less sharp. Until then, that box stays on my shelf, a reminder, a quiet symbol of everything I built, every time I was underestimated. And of the strength I found not in being loud or flashy, but in rising quietly and powerfully on my terms. Because in the end, our greatest strength often comes from the very parts of ourselves that others are too blind to see.